Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video and this is for Drag Race Season 16 Episode 7. So we'll be recapping this week's episode, we'll be going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you get to talk about if you agree with the outcome of the episode, and I'll also be talking about a little bit of tea that I saw to do with Megami clapping back about her critiques in the episode. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So the queens came back into the workroom after Geneva's elimination, and Maya has said that she is the new lip sync assassin. The queens then congratulate Q for finally getting her win, and Dawn seems a little bit upset that she doesn't have a win yet. And I'm not sure if it's just me, but I feels like in this episode particularly, with the editing, they were really pushing this narrative of Dawn being almost like the shady villain one. And it seems that other people felt that way too, because a Twitter user tweeted this photo of both Plain Jane and Dawn's confessional looks, and the caption said, "Who y'all think is the villain versus the real villain?" And Megami quote tweeted this and said, "Baby, I said Dawn is chaotic evil for a reason, LMAO." And this is definitely a narrative I feel like they showcased in this particular episode, and this was also accentuated even more by the fact that Plain Jane made a funny dig at Dawn for not having a win yet. And then Megami said that she was annoyed that she was beaten in the episode by Buzz Lightyear, and all the queens cracked up about this. And as soon as Megami made that comparison between Dawn and Buzz Lightyear, I just couldn't unsee it, and it was really funny. Saphira also talked about how she got in her own head last week, and that's why she used the immunity potion. And Saphira said that the queens finally saw a crack in her shell. And to me it was clear that they were setting up this episode to be Saphira's redemption. So the next day, the queens come back into the workroom and they find out that the challenge this week is a Rusical called The Sound of Rusic. And this is of course a parody of the famous 1965 movie The Sound of Music starring Julie Andrews. And I was personally really excited for this because I'm a massive fan of The Sound of Music, so I knew that I would actually understand all of the references in the Rusical for once. And as a side note, did anyone else think that Ru's outfit in the workroom with the large flower on the lapel was perhaps a reference to the iconic outfit that the Baroness wore in the movie? Although maybe it's just me reading too much into it because I am a Sound of Music superfan. Anyway, we see that Plasma is really excited for this challenge because she's a musical theatre queen and she also says that she's a massive fan of The Sound of Music. And I must say I was kind of surprised that some of the queens had never watched this movie or weren't very familiar with it. I guess it is a very old movie, but to me it was such a classic from my childhood that I thought that most people would have at least seen the movie as a child. Anyway, the queens have to pick their own roles for this Rusical, which is always a recipe for drama. Megami and Q both want the roles of Baroness, and Megami feels like she hasn't had a chance to show herself yet, but Q also said she really wants the role. And they end up doing rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets the role, which I thought was just a really funny way of doing it. But I guess it is the fairest way of doing it. And Q ends up winning the role. Megami also says that she wants the role of Mother Superior, but other people are saying that Saphira would be better in that role. Saphira and Plasma both want the main role of Mariah, which is obviously a parody of Maria, which was Julie Andrews' character in the movie. But Plasma is very defiant and said that she wants Mariah and she isn't prepared to do anything else. And this did sort of surprise me, but it also made good TV that Plasma was really putting her foot down. But it did kind of remind me of the previous episodes in the RDR Live challenge, when Plasma didn't want the role of Barbara Streisand, but then ended up taking it and winning. And similarly, Morphine also wants the role of Maria, but the other queens don't seem to see it for her. So Plasma ends up getting the main role and Saphira takes the Mother Superior role. And then I think they then try and push this narrative that there may be some pressure now for Plasma to win because she fought for the role. And Saphira said that the last queen that she fought with for a role went home. But I think this is just classic Drag Race of them trying to throw the audience off and trying to cast some doubt on what's going to happen in the episode. Later in the workroom, the queens are learning their lines, and Tsunami, Q, and Plain Jane decide to walk around and be like the mean girls because they are the three mean girls in the Rusical. And they go around and make funny digs at the other queens. And I think this was all just in fun and the queens were just kind of getting into their characters. I did see though that Plain Jane tweeted after the episode, presumably because she was receiving some criticism from people. And Plain said, "This discourse about mean girls and attacking someone is so tired. It's a competition. It ain't personal, it's drag." And this has been an ongoing topic surrounding this season, particularly with Plain Jane, with people questioning whether she's being fun and shady for TV or whether it's just mean. So let me know in the comments what you think about it, but please make sure you keep it respectful. We then move on and the queens go to learn the choreography, and Adam Shankman is the choreographer, and you may remember that he was also the choreographer for the last Rusical, which was Joan the Rusical on All Stars 8. And I thought one of the best moments from this was when the surprise guest, Melissa McCarthy, came in and she was pretending to be Adam's assistant who was late. And then Melissa just randomly started throwing out Baby Bell cheeses to the queens, which I thought was really funny. And this was definitely the fun, chaotic energy that we love Drag Race for. So now let's move on and talk about the actual performances, and I'll talk about them in order in which they appeared. So let's start with Sapphira as Mother Superior. I thought Sapphira really nailed this role, and I think she really set up the whole look and feel of this Rusical. I kind of feel like this role was probably the funniest of the whole Rusical, and the part later on when she kept telling Mariah to shush was so funny, and I think Sapphira also really embodied this character amazingly. We also had Morphine and Maya as Sister Sister and Sister Fister respectively, and I do feel slightly bad for these two because these two characters were quite small characters compared to Mother Superior, and I did feel like the lines that they did have just weren't really that funny compared to the Mother Superior lines. And I've said this before, but my personal issue with Rusicals is the same as my issue with scripting acting challenges, in that I just think that there are some roles that get all the jokes and all the airtime, and then there are other characters who just get no lines and no jokes. And it just seems a bit unfair because there's probably not much you can do with such a small role. And I think the role of Mother Superior was clearly the standout role of this trio. Overall though, I feel like Morphine and Maya did okay with the roles, and I think they did the choreo okay as well. And as the judges said, I think they were perhaps overshadowed slightly by Sapphira, but that is kind of to be expected because they did have smaller roles compared to Sapphira's. One moment I did find unintentionally hilarious though, was when Maya's habit fell over her face, but Maya just kept doing the choreo regardless. And although the judges kind of critiqued her for this, I actually thought that it was really funny and that it was good that Maya didn't let this faze her and she just carried on doing it, and I thought that was actually quite professional of her. And accidents obviously do happen, and yes, you can do things to try and avoid the accident in the first place, but I think the sign of a true performer is also what you do to react to the mistake once it happens. We then had the Family Von Snaps, which is clearly a parody of the Family Von Trapp, which is the name of the family from the movie Sound of Music. And in the roles, we had Dawn as Strudel von Snap, Megami as Schnitzel von Snap, and Nymphia as Diesel von Snap. And just to explain about the pinecone reference that they kept making for Nymphia's character, just in case you don't understand, in the original movie of Sound of Music, the children play a prank on their new nanny, which is Julie Andrews' character Maria. And so when they're having dinner on the first night together, the children leave a pinecone on Maria's chair so that she unknowingly sits on it, and the children are clearly trying to embarrass her. And I assume this is why they kept making references to pinecones throughout the Rusical. Anyway, back to the Rusical, and again, I feel like these three characters were kind of small roles and there just wasn't much substance to them. I understand that you can only have a certain number of starring roles in a show like this, but these three characters just felt a little bit like background characters. I thought Nymphia looked quite funny with the pigtails, and she probably had the funniest character of the three in the trio because of the pinecone references. And I'm not sure if the hair was Nymphia's choice or whether it was given to the queens as part of the wardrobe, but it definitely helped her character stand out between the trio. But contrary to what the judges said, I did actually think that Megami did a decent job in this role, given that she only had one proper funny line, and I think that she had the large breastplate which did help her to stand out. But overall, as I said, these three roles were kind of forgettable because they didn't really have many lines. Then we had Plain Jane and Tsunami as Baronets and Q as Baroness Braun. I definitely think this trio had the best lines and also the best characterization out of the trios. And I feel like often the villains get the best lines on shows and movies, and that was kind of the case here. And I think Plain Jane and Tsunami did a great job as these kind of mean girl sidekicks. But Q's role as Baroness was clearly the standout, and her role was arguably one of the biggest roles in the entire show, and I did think that Q did a great job. I loved that she did a kind of Amanda Lepore style, and I thought Q really embodied this character well. And I thought the gag at the end with the really large stole over her shoulder was really great physical comedy. And I'm probably biased as well because the Baroness is perhaps my favourite character from The Sound of Music, but I do also think that Q was really good in this role. And if you're also a fellow fan of The Sound of Music, let me know who your favourite character is in the comments. And finally, we had Plasma as Mariah Grande, which, as I said before, is a parody of the main character of Maria from the movie, and obviously the name is a mix of Mariah Carey and Ariana Grande. I thought Plasma did such an amazing job in this role, and she really knocked it out the park. Oftentimes, the main role of a Rusical doesn't always have the best lines, even if they're in the most amount of scenes. For example, Lucy LaDuca on season 15 was arguably the main character of Heaven Bacon in Wig Loose, but she ended up in the bottom that week, which I was kind of surprised about because I thought she did quite well given that she was in pretty much every scene. But I think Plasma did such a great job and she did all the choreo and the lip syncing flawlessly. And we need to remember that Plasma was in pretty much every scene, so she had so much choreo and so many words to learn, and I think she really did nail it. So I think it was really impressive that she managed to do all of that in such a small amount of time and make it look so flawless. And that wig she had on looked so much like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, and I thought she really embodied that character but also made it drag. There were also a couple of references that I wanted to mention quickly that you may not have understood. At one point, the Baronets sing a song called Break Up, So Long, Farewell, and the So Long Farewell part is a parody of a real song of the same name from the original movie Sound of Music. But the song itself was based on the song Break Up, Bye Bye, which is from Drag Race UK Season 1 in the Girl Group Challenge. And the version that they were probably referencing was Davina De Campo, Bag of Chips, and Blue Hydrangea. And earlier in the Rusical, there was a moment when Plasma's character was asked why she should be allowed in the group, and she said that she can sing 8 octaves. And I don't know if this was just me, but I thought perhaps this was a reference to Drag Race UK Season 1, when Davina De Campo was arguing with the Vivian, and Davina said, quote, "Tell me anyone in this workroom who has a 4.5 octave range." And this became a bit of an iconic moment associated with Davina and Drag Race UK Season 1, so I wasn't sure if maybe they were putting this in as a slight joke. There was also a moment when the Baronets said that they had taken out part of the Fon Snap's car. This is also from the Sound of Music movie, when the nuns at the end secretly take out parts of the Nazis' car so that they can't chase after the family Von Trapp when they're trying to escape. There were lots of other references too to the movie, like when they talked about 16 going on 17, but I won't go through all of them, but let me know in the comments if there were any references that you picked up on that I haven't talked about. Okay, so moving on to the runway for this week, and the category was I Could Buy Myself Flowers, which is obviously based on the Miley Cyrus song. As usual, I'm not going to be critiquing the fashion because, as we know, when it comes to fashion, I clearly have COVID because I have no taste. So I'm just going to go through the looks and talk about any commentary that the queens gave with the looks. So first we have Plasma, and she said that her 2 favourite movies are My Fair Lady and Funny Girl, and in Funny Girl she gets a yellow rose, which is why Plasma's outfit is decked in yellow roses. Next was Safira Cristal, and she said that this is her fantasy drag with big huge petals as wings, and Safira said her flower is so big she can barely fit on the runway, and Safira can't be contained. And there is a bit of interesting backstage tea about this look, which was talked about at Roscoe's, but you'll need to check out my Roscoe's recap for this week to find out what. Then we had Morphine Love Dion, who said that she is a flower child Miami girl who went back in time to the 1970s, went to Woodstock and is just happy to be there. Next we had Maya Iman LePage, who said that this look really represents her and her drag, and she chose to be a rose full of stones and glitz and glamour. Then we had Dawn, who said that this is Ghoul Dawn, and she's a forlorn lover who's been dead for years and she's annoyed about it. And this look was apparently inspired by dead flowers on gravestones. Next we had Megami, who said it's her wedding day and her wedding dress is stained, so she's giving you a sexy, chic and campy bride. And later on the runway, Megami explained that it was a bride whose dress got stained, so she grabbed all the flower arrangements and used them to make an outfit. Then we had Nymphia Wind, who said that her look is very her style because it's very camp and unexpected, and she also said that it's well made. And then later on Instagram, Nymphia confirmed that she made this outfit herself. Next we had Q, who said that she's serving Lotus Mantis and it's more creature-esque with very long arms. And every detail is thought out because Q is always going to surprise you. Then we had Plain Jane, who said she's giving Rapunzel and she's pulling her hair and on the end of it is a handsome prince. And Plain said that this look is a bit different for her, but it's still giving the element of camp that people expect from her. And finally we had Tsunami Muse, who said that she's giving an upside down bouquet with the cellophane at the top wrapped around the stems, which was the green bodice part, and then the ruffles are flowers at the bottom. So moving on to the judges' critiques, and we find out that the top 3 for this week are Saphira, Q and Plasma, with Plasma ultimately taking the win. And then in the bottom we have Morphine, Maya and Megami. Morphine is called safe and Maya and Megami lip sync to Flowers by Miley Cyrus. Maya ultimately wins the lip sync and Megami is unfortunately told to sashay away. So now let's move on to the results of the Have Your Say poll. Question 1 was, do you agree with the outcome of this week's episode, i.e. tops, bottoms and elimination? And we had 58.7% for yes and 41.3% for no. So it seems like the majority of people voted for yes, they did agree with the outcome of this episode, but it was actually kind of close this week. Question 2 was, in your opinion, who should have won this week? And we had Plasma, unsurprisingly, with 62.5%. And I do agree, Plasma really did so well this week, and I thought she not only did the role so well, but you could tell that she was just so naturally good at doing it, and she made it look so effortless, so I really do think she deserved the win. Next we had Saphira Crystal with 29.7%, and again I thought Saphira did so well, she really embodied this character, and I would be happy to watch a TV show of just Saphira doing this character. And then we had Q with 3.9%. And I do really like Q. I thought Q perhaps had the smaller of the 3 main roles, but I thought she still did it really well and I thought it was a really funny character. And then we also had Nymphia Wind with 1.3%, which I thought was kind of interesting because we didn't necessarily see that much of her, although Nymphia did have perhaps the most interesting of the 3 characters in her trio. But we'll come on to Nymphia a little bit later because this is important later on. Question 3 was, in your opinion, who should have been eliminated this week? And we actually, for the first time ever, had a tie. So we had 43.6% for both Megami and Maya Iman LePage. And it does make sense that these two would be in the bottom because they were in the bottom 2 and had to lip sync. I think in terms of the lip sync, for me, I wasn't quite sure who was going to win because they were both doing kind of different styles. I feel like Megami maybe embodied the actual song a bit more, whereas I think Maya was just giving more energy. And I was surprised that Maya won, but only because she took her shoes off, which is usually a big no-no in Drag Race. We also had Tsunami Muse with 5.3%, which did kind of surprise me because I felt like her role was quite funny, but she also, I thought, was just very safe because her character didn't really have that many lines, but I thought she did a perfectly good job. And we also had Morphine Love Dion with 4%, which also makes sense because she was also in the bottom 3. And weirdly, we had 0.3% for Plasma, which I thought was quite weird because I don't think she deserved to be eliminated at all. I think the opposite. I think she deserved to win this week, and she did. Question 4 was, in your opinion, who did the best in the challenge this week? And again, unsurprisingly, we had Plasma with 60.8% and then Saphira Crystal with 30.1%. Interestingly though, we also had Q with 3.1%, which does make sense because she was a big character. And we also had Plain Jane with 2.7%. And again, I can kind of see this because I do think that those baronets were quite funny characters and I think they definitely stood out more than some of the other background characters. Question 5 was, in your opinion, who had the best runway look this week? And with 46%, we had Saphira Crystal. And I do agree, Saphira was absolutely stunning this week. That outfit was ginormous, but it also was just so well made and so cool to look at. As Michelle said, it was like being at Carnival, so it was really cool. Next we had Q with 24.6%. And again, Q always turns it on the runway, and I thought this was quite a different look for Q because it was quite kind of monstery and bordering on that sort of slightly oddball style, but I still think it looked so beautiful and so well made. And then we also had Plasma with 18.2%. And I agree, I thought Plasma looked so just classically beauty, and I think it fit the character and also the role so well, particularly in this week because it was the Rusical week, and she was referencing an amalgamation of 2 different musicals. And then the other people who were high in this vote were Nymphia Wind and Dawn, and I agree, they both had great looks. And then finally, question 6 was, in your opinion, who is the front runner so far, i.e. the most likely to win the season? And unsurprisingly, as has become tradition, we have 45.8% for Ninfia Wind. And this brings us on to an interesting point, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute when we talk about the comments. But I agree that Ninfia is doing extremely well in the season, and I do think that she is likely the front runner because she's so talented at everything. But I do think in this particular episode, Ninfia just wasn't really shown at all. We then had Saphira Crystal with 24.9%, and again, that does make sense. Saphira has been great throughout the whole season. And then I guess in third place, we have Q with 12.5%, which again, doesn't surprise me because Q has been great every single week and has only really faltered once. And then we had Plain Jane and Plasma with 7.9 and 7.6% respectively. Okay, so moving on to the comments for this week. So my first comment comes from a Patreon member called Triton/Craig, who said, Plasma just blew me away with that performance. That was a huge role that would intimidate any professional actor. And I do definitely agree, as I said earlier, I think Plasma made it look effortless, and that's a lot harder to do than it looks. So I do think that Plasma definitely deserved the win this week. Next, we had another comment from a Patreon member, and this is Shelby. And Shelby said, Rusical aside, let's talk about Ninfia's edit. It made it seem like she didn't say one word until the last 5 minutes. What was that about? Strange editing choice considering she's a frontrunner. Are the producers trying to dim her spotlight? What's the tea? And this brings me on to what I said earlier, that I do think that Ninfia is definitely a frontrunner, but I thought it was weird that she wasn't really shown in this episode. And another thing I thought was interesting was there was a few comments I saw on YouTube where people were saying that they said that they thought Ninfia wasn't really lip syncing the words very well in the Rusical, and that may be why they were trying to kind of hide her in the edit. And I did definitely notice there were a few times I saw Ninfia and I didn't quite think that the lip sync matched the song, but I couldn't tell if that was just the edit or maybe the fact that lip syncing is actually harder than it looks when you're trying to dance at the same time. So let me know in the comments whether you think this is some kind of conspiracy that they were trying to hide Ninfia, or do you think it was just that other people did better than her this week? The next topic that came up quite a lot in the comments was the elimination and also the lip sync. And lots of people mentioned that Maya gave more energy, but she took her heels off, and that's usually a big no-no, and people were saying it was maybe a little bit messy. I do think that Maya was giving us great energy, and she is an amazing performer. I was a bit surprised because RuPaul usually hates it when people take shoes and wigs off during a lip sync, so I was a little bit surprised that RuPaul seemed to let that slip and Maya won the lip sync. And I do think that Megami maybe slightly embodied the song a little bit more because it's not really a tricks and flips song, it's a slightly more emotional song. And then someone else made a comment that was exactly the point that I was talking about earlier, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comments. But someone said, I loved the Rusical, but it felt unfair. The 3 main roles were in the top and the bottom queens had to fight not to be in the bottom. I'm not sure Q would have been in the top if Megami and Q had each other's role. And this is exactly what I've talked about before on Drag Race, not just with Rusicals but with scripted acting challenges. We've seen it before in Rusicals or scripted acting challenges that the 3 people who were in the top that week just so happened to be the 3 people who had the biggest and funniest lines. And then the people in the bottom are usually the people that are in some kind of trio because it's actually really hard to stand out in a trio. And I do think that perhaps it is difficult, I know, to distribute all of the lines evenly. You're always going to have some roles that are bigger than others, but I do think that maybe they need to make it slightly more even and give some people like Megami more than just one line. And now we're just going to move on to a quick bit of tea that I saw on Twitter after the episode regarding Megami. So as you may remember in the episode, Megami was in the bottom and got eliminated, and she seemingly wasn't that impressed with some of her critiques. And in Untucked, Megami said that she was annoyed that Q was praised for doing the choreo so well, but Megami said that Q's role didn't have any choreo, whereas Megami said that she had so much choreo to do and to learn but only had one line. And Megami and Tsunami also had a bit of tension in Untucked because Tsunami felt that Megami had been discrediting her trio's performance, and she said that Megami was being shady about them. But then Megami apologised to Tsunami in Untucked and they seemed to be cool after that. Well, on Twitter after the episode came out, Megami had seemingly been getting some criticism from people for the way that she had been acting. And Megami tweeted saying, I'm trying to not be in socials too much because it's been a rough evening. Please don't talk bleep, send hate, be nasty to anyone in the cast. Reminder, this was TV. We are all literally friends, calm down. And it also seemed that Maya had been getting some hate online, presumably because she beat Megami in the lip sync and people thought that Megami should have stayed over Maya. And Megami said, "I literally shouldn't even have to post this. Y'all know better. We do this every season. It does not make me feel better when you send Maya hate. Grow up." Megami also said that she had had time to watch the episode and said, "We had so much choreo to learn and I effing did the damn thing. But I guess if I had to go home, I'm glad that it was to a challenge where I know I did great and even the judges said I did great. Better to die a hero than live to be the villain, I guess." Megami also seemingly clapped back about some of the comments that the judges had made. For example, Michelle had critiqued Megami and said that Megami's face always looks the same. And Megami didn't really seem to agree, although she didn't really say that much about it in the episode. However, after the episode aired, several people tweeted about Michelle's critique to Megami and said that it was unfair and untrue. And it appears that Megami also didn't really agree with Michelle's critique either, because Megami retweeted a tweet that someone had done where they had 4 photos of Megami's different looks from the season with the caption, "Ah yes, Megami is always doing the same look. These all give the exact same vibes." And this was clearly meant in a sarcastic way. And Megami also seemingly addressed some of the criticism that she had been getting about fading into the background in the challenge. And Megami said, "My character had 3 lines and no actual personality in the script besides wants a boyfriend but has a hairy pussy. At the very least, an attempt was made to give her something." Megami had also tweeted several days earlier, responding to some comments that people had been making, saying that Megami was the Eeyore of drag and doesn't have a big personality and is always being downbeat. And Megami said, "You know what, maybe I don't have an over-the-top character for TV drama, but I'm a chill-ass bee who just wants to smoke weed, make my friends laugh and have a good-ass time." And Megami has made some great points here, and as I always say, there is never any need to send hate to the queens. It's just a TV show at the end of the day, so please be mindful of what you post online because the queens do often see the mean comments and it's very hurtful. So let's keep it all nice and friendly, please. So there you go, there was my Have Your Say for Drag Race Season 16 Episode 7. Did you agree with the tops and bottoms of this episode? And who do you think is going to win the season? Let me know in the comments. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to my latest Patreon member, Rachel, who joined in the You're a Winner Baby tier. Thank you, Rachel, you are a winner, baby. And I just want to take this moment to say thank you so much to my incredible Patreon members. In the You're a Winner Baby tier, we have Christian, Emerald1508, Ethan, Lisa, PC Smush, Rachel and Rochelle. And then in the Shantae You Stay tier we have Amy, Becky, Charlie, David, Linda, Shelby and Craig. Thank you so much. I really do love my Patreon community. You're all such great supporters and it really does make such a massive difference to my channel, so thank you all so much. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos such as this one, as well as a raft of other benefits, please consider joining my Patreon and supporting my channel, and I'll put a link in the description. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks again for watching and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!